Okay, so in the spring of 2019, we picked up the kids their first bike, which was a 2019 CRF110. I think a lot of people have memories of growing up on those bikes. They're pretty small, but they're a great way to start off. And so that was the first bike the kids had. Now, when we bought that bike, we could have actually picked up a 2018 CRF110, but by waiting a little bit longer, we were able to pick up this bike, which was a 2019 CRF110, and there was quite a few changes on there. So when they released this in 2013, it featured Honda's horizontal engine, which has been featured in hundreds of bikes throughout the years. A lot of you probably have memories of riding Trail 70s, Trail 110s. Honda has taken this design and used it for decades. It's a proven, reliable design. In modern day, you can actually find the Grom and Monkey with a street legal 125cc horizontal engine design as well. So this is just a design that Honda is never going to give up on, which they shouldn't, because this is a fantastic motor. Back to 2019 though, there was a couple big changes on this bike. The biggest one you probably know about, but some of the underappreciated changes that don't get talked about enough is the fact that in 2013 through 18, there was more of a traditional backbone frame, where in 2019, Honda went for the twin spar frame, which is more similar to their motocross bikes. And the reason that was kind of like a bigger deal is some of the heavier riders who've rode the 110s and abused them a little bit, they might bend that backbone a little bit. And then once you've bent that frame, it's kind of done. It's probably not worth your time fixing. So going to the twin spar frame, and they changed the steering geometry of it, was supposed to give it, you know, better durability and probably better handling. I say probably because I haven't ridden the previous models, but that was a noticeable change. The front forks were left alone. They're non-adjustable, but they got a new rear shock with longer travel for the 2019 model year. And also with the longer rear travel, they were able to actually make the seat foam thicker, but they still kept the seat a little bit shorter than the 2018, so making it more accessible to a further range of riders. But anyway, a lot of those changes, while they add up and they were nice, it's not really what was the big deal. What the big deal was for 2019 is they went to fuel injection for the first time ever. The motor itself was left alone, but by going to fuel injection, we gained a handful of benefits along the way. One of them was, for a lot of people, especially if you're in California, is this is a green sticker bike. This is stickered to ride pretty much anywhere, and that's both due to noise, emissions. It's good to go. And I can tell you the fuel injection, unlike my 450L, doesn't have any hesitations, jerkiness. This is butter smooth. This bike is so smooth to ride, easy and accessible, so the fuel injection is completely dialed in and spot on. But also with the fuel injection on here, you get easier starting. It on its own applies this little bit of a choke, a kind of a fast idle effect is the easiest way to think of it. And there's no more clogging. You don't have to worry about the pilot jet getting clogged, which, you know, in any carburetor is a pretty common way to do it. And the gas efficiency, the fuel mileage of this bike is crazy. We'll fill it up and they'll ride all day long, and we hardly ever see the low fuel light. And that's another cool feature it has a low fuel light. So instead of having a reserve, there is no petcock. So you don't have the on, off, and reserve, but you do have a fuel light that illuminates when the gas tank's down to about 0.2 gallons. But we almost never see that light. We just don't worry about it. So a nice feature, besides the fact that it is a turnkey electric start fuel injected bike for the kids, it also carries a backup Kickstarter. So even if the lead acid battery that comes with this bike is dead, it doesn't require the battery. You can kickstart it. And in fact, just for fun, I had the battery out at one point, and this will start and run with the kickstart without a battery in it. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, because if you have loose wiring, you know, you might short something out, but having the battery dead or not is no concern on here. So if you're a parent and you got your kids on it and it's dead, you can just kickstart it for them, and some of the larger kids can probably do the same thing. Turns out the 110 will start without a battery. I was just curious. Turned the key on, kicked it over, and everything lit up. So whether you got a no battery or a dead battery, as long as you brought your leg with you, you can still ride. But between the electric start, fuel injection, there is no clutch. This is a completely automatic bike. Up to first gear from neutral through all 4 gears. This is as close to a Cadillac of a bike I've ever seen. It rides smooth, the suspension's smooth, the throttle's smooth. Smooth is the way to describe this bike through and through. And surprisingly, when I picked up this bike in 2019, the MSRP only went up by $150. I do think it's up a little bit now. I could believe the current model is $2,500. I'll show that on the screen. But for $2,500, even modern day, dollar for dollar, this is probably the best bike I've ever owned. So this bike for me kind of gets looked at from two different perspectives. I, as a father, look at this bike for my kids, but I also kind of like riding this bike myself, and a lot of adults do. So that's kind of what I want to break down a little further here, is how do I look at this for the kids and how do I look at it for myself? So there's really kind of two approaches this bike fits in for the kids. This is probably either going to be the first bike they've ever ridden, or this might be the second one as they come off of a TTR 50 or a CRF 50 as they're working their way through the line. This would be the next one on here. However, even if this is your kid's first bike and they haven't ridden one before, this is a pretty well-mannered bike. It's simple. They don't have the clutch to worry about learning on. You can just help them walk through and just keep them in first gear. We never worried about limiting the power on the 50. We've never worried about trying to limit power on this one. Just let them ride. That's how it is. The only prerequisite we had is you got to be able to pedal a bike and ride. Okay, we didn't really want to do the training wheel aspect. We were just a little stubborn with our kids, plus they were older. It's like, you're just going to learn how to ride and not worry about it, because if you're looking for training wheels, I have yet to see training wheels for this bike. Maybe you can find them out there, but those are predominantly on your 50 series bikes you'll see. Now this bike is a trail bike, so in the model line it's the CRF110F. Honda honestly doesn't really support youth racing anymore. They don't have any beginner race bikes. The only bike they have that's for youth is a CRF150R, and that bike only really works in the super mini class. It competes with the 85s, but I believe in the super mini class you can increase the CCs on your 85cc two-stroke. So Honda's pretty much given up on the two-stroke stuff, but that's really where the youth racing is. So if you want to get your kids through the youth rank, through the racing ranks, you're going to be looking at KTM, Husqvarna, Kawasaki. You know, there's other brands that still support it. We went the Yamaha route. And so my oldest son, Liam, started with this right before he turned 8. And then later that summer, he went through a growth spurt and we picked up a YZ65. So I was still really happy to start with the trail bikes to let them get the feeling of everything before we advanced into the racing bikes, because we're not a racing family. We like to do it. We like to go to the MX track, but we're not a racing family. That's just a simple way to do it. We're very much more so the mixed recreation use. Now, the tires that this comes with are very much a long-lasting, good trail tire. There's nothing wrong with them, but we felt like they kind of washed out a little too easily and loose, so we ended up putting MX tires on here. The Dunlop, I believe it's the Dunlop 33 series. It's a soft tire, works really well, and so that's a tire I can recommend to pretty much anybody on here. Like the way this bike rides here with it now. And aside from changing the tires and putting adult grips on it, we've pretty much left the bike stock. There's nothing that we've done to it. And so referencing mixed use, we recently, a few weeks ago, went to the motocross track the first time. And so my oldest son, Liam, he's on his YZ65 out there. But Tyler, who just turned 8, he's out there riding this on the track, and honestly, he's keeping the pace very good. So Tyler's out there holding his own, and he had a great time on this bike at the racetrack. Yes, he is looking forward to when Liam goes to an 85 and he gets a 65, kind of that succession. He's looking forward to it, but he loves this bike. I, as a parent, love it because the only thing I have to do to this bike is change oil, keep the air filter clean, and put gas in it. There's really not a lot of work on here. The valves aren't a concern yet, and if I need to adjust them, they're easy. This bike's pretty much gonna run forever. I don't have to worry about it. So as a parent, I know I've always got a bike for the kids that they can hop on here, and it's gonna work pretty much forever. You'll still find that all your main Japanese manufacturers make a 110. Your main 3 are the Honda you see here, Yamaha, and Kawasaki. Now, when the Honda was carbureted, from what I read, the Yamaha had more horsepower to the carburetor than the Honda did. But when Honda went to the fuel injection for this bike, they gained about a half horsepower with that change as well. And so I do believe that this bike got an edge on the Yamaha when that happened. Now, Kawasaki, if you want to skip the auto clutch for your kid and have them learn a clutch, Kawasaki offers a 110 with a clutch right from the get-go. So that might be more appealing for you and a reason to skip either the Honda or Yamaha to go that way. At the end of the day though, if you've got a preferred brand and they make a 110, just go with your preferred brand. They all kind of function very similar in a similar fashion. Now, where things change a little bit here is as my kids get older and they progress to the next level bikes, it's kind of nice to sell the bike they're outgrowing and take that money and put it towards it. But when my youngest someday is done with this bike, I don't know that we're going to sell this bike or not. I haven't decided that. I was watching some Nitro Circus videos of some pit bike races that they hosted, and those look like a lot of fun. I've never competitively raced myself, but a pit bike race actually looks like something I'd love to enter into someday. Now, I wouldn't want to race it the way it sits today, but when all the kids have outgrown this, this would be very easy to slap some full-size handlebars on. You can put an exhaust on it. Previously on other generations, I've seen you can change the subframe, maybe extend the swing arm, lift the suspension some. There's a lot of things you can do to make a pit bike racer. You can also spend a lot of money making a pit bike racer too. Now, if you really, for an adult though, if you want to look at buying a 110 seriously just for yourself to race, you probably might want to consider looking at the Kawasaki 110 and get the one with a clutch. And because Kawasaki really kicked off the whole 110 pit bike racing, they're the ones that really started it, and there is just a flood of parts and options available to you in the aftermarket for that. I think it's the KLX 110, but you can find so much for it on the Kawasaki side. But in my situation, since we started off with the kids and went the Honda route, once we're done with this in 5 or 6 years, there's probably going to be a lot of aftermarket support, and at that point we could do that. I also think sometimes you get into the arguments, is it the bike or the rider? It would be really fun to kind of mod this up a little bit and have all the kids and myself be on an equal playing field, and then just do some lap times and just say, you know, is it the bike or is it the rider? Because once they outgrow this, any of them will be able to handle full-size handlebars and some modifications on it. Now, as far as downsides go, the only thing I could really say on here that both for myself or the kids that you kind of wish it wasn't, was you wish it wasn't so heavy. This bike weighs quite a bit, and I'll look up the numbers, but as a comparison to my oldest YZ65 that has about 17 horsepower compared to the 7.5 on this one, his bike's over 50 pounds lighter than this one is. And you can attribute those to the electric start, the battery on here. His air-cooled engine weighs a little more, and it's 110 cc's versus 65. It's not a fair comparison, but it is something to be mindful of. So as an example, the XR650L I used to own, the XR bikes were considered Honda's big red pig, and this 110 and a lot of them, well, they're kind of big pigs. This tips the scales closer, if not above, a full-size YZ125 two-stroke. So I'll throw some numbers up here on the screen since I don't know those offhand, but it'll kind of give you an idea that, yeah, this thing does carry a lot of weight with it, but it does carry the weight well. It's a very low center of gravity. The bike handles fine, but it's heavy. It is a heavy bike. But aside from being heavy, I don't really actually have any other complaints for it. What this bike is and what it tries to do, it delivers 100% through and through. It has been nothing but reliable. The fuel injection's never hesitated once. We haven't had any check engine lights. It's been perfect for us, and we've abused this. There was one time last year, there was a hill I tried climbing, and both myself and Liam were on this bike, and I tried climbing up that hill, and the bike didn't give up. It just didn't have enough traction power to tow over 300 pounds up a hill. That's way beyond its weight limit on there. I think we stretched the chain out a couple times because, again, we're pulling so much more weight than we're really meant to, but it takes it, it handles it, and that's why you see adults racing these bikes. It's just a lot of fun. So yes, is this the bike I'd go out and buy for myself? No, it's not. But when you look at the cost of this bike compared to what a full-size bike costs brand new, you get a lot of smiles per dollar on these bikes. They're really well, and if you take care of it and keep it clean when you go to sell it, there's not a big loss to be had on here. So if you buy this for $2,500 and run it for 5 or 7 years, you're probably going to turn and get $1,500 to $1,800 for it. You probably lose more in tax and freight and setup than you're actually losing on the price of the bike. So, or because these are so reliable, go try to find one used. There should be a lot of options out there for you on the market. So at the end of the day though, all this talk, this is a fantastic bike. If you're considering one for the family, go get it. There's going to be no regrets. The only way this isn't the right bike for you is if you want to get the kids into racing. Other than racing, this is the way to go. No regrets for it. And your family, anybody who wants to swing a leg over it is going to have a good time. So I hope you guys find this video helpful. We've loved this bike for the 1.5 years we've had it, and we wouldn't change anything about it. So thanks for watching the video with us. Keep riding, and we'll see you next time.